bit since I last seen y'all, okay? It's been about a week, okay? And, okay, it's been a few days, but it's basically about a week, right? I have been continuing to follow this case, right? It is just so much going on. So even though y'all ain't been seeing me, trust me, I'm like out here in these streets, okay? Like when I say in these streets, I'm all up in these receipts. I'm getting to these receipts. Y'all know how I am. And I've been doing a lot of listening, okay? Because there's quite a few interviews going on. And people's interviewing the interviewees. So I was like, okay. Um, Okay, so based off all of that, I was like, let me get into the receipts. Let me listen. Do I hear any inconsistencies? Because what have we been doing with this series, child? I've been telling y'all, learn with me, help me out. I'm gonna help you out. We're gonna interact with the social media content or these things that people are making now publicly accessible. We're gonna interact with them in a different way. Because I'm studying criminal law right now, because I'm looking at material from a different perspective than I think initially I would look at content, I was like, I'm gonna just share that with you guys, right? So I've been actually listening to material, I've been watching interviews, like literally comparing statements because there's so many statements that came out this week, right? Um, we've been watching what YouTube, we've been on TikTok, we've been looking to see what's all in the news, right? Places that I didn't know was really, in the chat, as they say, right? I have been following that content and seeing, what's going on. I've been looking to see for like some social media content individuals, and there's one that I find their work to be very, very interesting. I'm gonna call them like a social like an investigator, right? They have been going on social media and they have been really like doing a high level of mapping. So I have their content. I'm going to be doing a couple of videos where I kind of break down some of the things. So that'll be another video where I do the whole baseline breakdown, like someone who wants to just kind of get where all the different pieces that people are kind of mapping that fall somewhat in alignment, right? Not every story is going to fall completely in alignment. And when something just perfectly matches, that's something that should give you a little pause, make you ask some questions. When something just perfectly falls in place, information wise, makes my head tip a little bit, right? Because if something just perfectly maps and does things perfectly, I usually have the impression that maybe someone wanted it to, and that would give me pause, right? So I'm not gonna say it's gonna be perfect alignment because there might not be, but I'm going to definitely show you some of the things I've been finding that creators have been putting out. I'm not saying that this is going to say that someone's innocent, that somebody's guilty, but child, it's certainly a receipt, okay? Because what the open sources that they are using are also open sources a lot of times that we are using on this channel. So I thought it'd be really nice if we showed this other creators findings and we kind of analyze that from a critical perspective, if we use like a criminal law perspective, right? So that's what we gonna do. We gonna get into the receipt. Okay, that makes sense. We ain't gonna be here long because this is a little bit later live. Y'all know I normally do them earlier in the day, but I know there's some of the people who follow the channel, like y'all have different time frames that y'all come on here and I say, listen, I have been just literally consuming this stuff all week, watching all these interviews. I have lots of information that I'm going to start to break down, but y'all know to me it's super important that we marinate on things and I don't just start throwing out ideas just because I think something. I want to make sure that I can corroborate certain things, or at least I can map certain things. I can find certain information in certain kind of other places before I just throw it to y'all, right? Everything that I bring to y'all is open source, so you don't have to worry about feeling like my content is up and it's gonna get snatched down because it wasn't supposed to be up, right? So anything that I show y'all, y'all should be able to look up on your own as well, because I feel like it's super important that we just like share in that kind of way. I will also give credit to the creators who originally put the work out. I'm not gonna ever take credit for somebody else's stuff. So you will see that I leave their handles. If you are interested, you go look at their stuff, comment, support, give them the engagement that they deserve for the work that they have been doing. Sound fair so far? Any questions so far? Okay. Because, child, I don't want to take up too much time. I'm going to focus this live on more of the GPS mapping, because that's kind of where we last left off when we talked about the actual report that I showed you guys. The person who is the content creator doing this report or this finding, right, that they said that they came up with, I looked at the document. So when they showed the document they were basing the time frames off of, it matched exactly to the one that I have. Okay. I went line for line. It was the same document. I even at one video, they have like 10 on their account, 10 recent. I looked and saw that it looked like they pulled from the same exact link that I had. So I feel very comfortable with that actual official report. Well, we'll just say documented report that they had that they're pulling their numbers off of. Okay. So when I say numbers, I'm talking about the coordinates. Okay. So it's not about like what actually happened because we don't technically know all that right now, but at least we can talk about what the information is actually showing us. So it's kind of been that setup so far. Now that I see we got a couple people in the chat. If it's your first time in the chat, definitely let us know. I don't know. I see something in the comments. I will give you a second and then I'll come back and read that. I'm not certain about that question. I can answer if you kind of give me a little bit more clarification. Okay. So if you're new to this channel or it's your first time seeing me, you know, kind of, let me see, put a smiley face in the chat so that I know that I have some newer people visiting. If you've already been here before, give me a thumbs up and I can kind of get an idea who all is in the room. Okay, because you guys know we have the evidence board. Once again, I'm not going to dive into all of those pieces, but we're going to look at some of the receipts, the way that she breaks them down. We're going to do it right now. I'm going to let y'all see it first, and then we're going to chop into a couple of things because she's going to map out a lot of details for us, okay? And then once again, if people have questions, put them in the chat. We can talk about it here on Legally Everywhere because, child, what? We getting into this receipt. So let us go back. It moved. It moved. This one.
Y'all ready for today's Nolan Wells info drop? So first off, we remember these GPS coordinates that were plotted for us, remember? Those GPS coordinates were taken from Wyatt's.
This is the same exact report. Once again, I want y'all to see this is the same exact report that I had for you guys, okay? It's the same exact report, and I want y'all to see it. I'm actually going to put this on a selfie stick. Let's see if that'll work for y'all. I've been trying to modify to make things easier. Okay, so y'all can see this is the same exact report I showed y'all before, right? I lined it up. Everything that she's showing on this report is exact same as the one I showed you. Obviously, the difference would be the things that she is highlighting. So at some point, we can go back in and do a little double dive in on the highlighted pieces, but she will explain. This is the TikToker. Her account is Nerdy Pink Panda 1. She has another account. So once again, if you're looking, go ahead and give her, you know, some engagement because she's giving us some really good information. We are going back live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And they were plugged into Google Earth and they developed a PowerPoint slide that we saw there that mapped out all of the points. So I decided to overlay those Google points on top of the points of the research that I'd already been doing. I discovered some interesting stuff because if they were just overlaying it on Google Earth, it should have been easy as cake, right? Well, I cannot tell you how many hours I spent trying to perfectly overlay this. Like, look at the islands in the middle here. I get them lined up and then other things won't match up. Like you'll notice, like I said, these islands, look, they aren't moving, but everything else around it isn't working. So right away, my instincts are telling me that somebody manipulated this image to cover something up. Of course, that is alleged. I can't prove that, but, you know, it's supposed to just overlay. So honestly, I just did the best I could, and I mostly just focused on the top half, trying to get like the marina and the grandparents' house they went to all line up. So now we can really follow which way this boat was driving and the kind of stops it seemed to be making. And if you'll notice here, it goes right next to that marina that I was telling you guys about with the Marty McGrath, which is who, according to Katie, that she got a ride from. So that past the marina, as you can see, it juts out almost like it was pulling up to this dock. And then there's these two houses here, especially this house, where it seems like the boat pulled into the docks there. Then it went all the way down here. There's a little like lock area here, so you have to go through here. And it went to the bridge. And I was like, why did they go all the way to the bridge to turn around? But it turns out right here is a big old fishing pier. Then right next to that is the Ocean Springs Yacht Club. And a lot of these families are connected to the yacht club. But before I go on, I want to play a portion of this audio that's supposedly like a voicemail that has been going around. It has been authenticated, but it has important information. Because I'll be honest, it sounds genuine to me and it works with my data. So hold on.
But he was like, oh, I'm just going to go back with Katie. We'll be right behind y'all. We'll go in the same house, the same place. He was like, I'll be right behind y'all. Y'all go ahead without me. I'll see y'all. Like, I'm literally going to be right behind y'all, whatever. Wyatt and all them left because they were like, okay, you're just going to go with Katie, whatever. Well, then everybody got back in and we were all at Ava's house and...
So first off, all of us were going to go to the same place. I'm going to go in with Katie. Meaning Katie was supposed to be at that party with them. Or at least whoever Katie was with was supposed to be at that party, right? But that's not the important part. The important part is the name of the person who was throwing the party was Ava. Now, I found Ava. I'm not going to put her name out there, but simple Google searches will find this information. And I was able to basically just Google her name and find her address. And so the party was actually right in this yellow area. Again, I'm not going to be like pointing out people's houses, but I found it. After they leave this pier that's right next to the yacht club, they go all the way back and then they hook around and they go right next to where the party is. And then that's when they finally go and take the boat out of the water. Now, it seems to me like they were dropping people off, like, because look how it goes in a little bit, almost like it was pulling into this pier at the marina, like I suspected. And they were just making the rounds, dropping people off before the party. Now, her family and Wyatt's family, Warren's family, they're all connected. They're also part of the yacht club stuff. All of these rich families are super close, super connected. They're taking each other's kids on vacations, etc. Well, like just in May, there was a joint birthday party. In the background of this birthday party from the beginning of May, there's Warren's mom, there's his little brother, and right there in the background is the mayor of Ocean Springs, Bobby Cox. In fact, here's another picture of him from the party, just in case that profile view wasn't enough for you. Oh, and he was tagged in the picture. Oh, and remember Lieutenant Carone, the first person on the report that we see when Nolan's mom called them in missing? Well, as it turns out, someone that he's related to, I can't pinpoint exactly how the relation is, but their maiden name is the same as his last name. Yeah, turns out they have the same last name as who? The girl whose party it was. And I have confirmed that that woman is mutual friends of the mother of the girl who threw the party. And I'm gonna go ahead and just wild guess theory, this is alleged, but I'm gonna go ahead and guess that the reason they waited so long to tell the mom was they were waiting to make sure that he was on shift. And this is why I'm thinking more and more that they brought Nolan back to the house. Everybody got their stories straight and stuff, and then they waited to tell Nolan's mom until he was going to be on his shift and taking that phone call. Which is probably why nobody was sent out to look for him that fucking night. That's why we don't have any footage of them going back to the grandparents' house up there. That's why no pictures from this supposed party ever came out.
Okay. So what are you guys' thoughts on that particular information, right? Now, the last piece where certain assumptions are being made, I can't align myself with assumptions, right? Because we want to definitely be lining ourselves with what can be verified, truths, certain kind of information like that, right? But it's very interesting perspective, right? She was able to give us, I won't necessarily call it evidence, but for the sake of this, she was able to take certain information and map it, right? She was able to show us her process, why she believes what she believes. How might a criminal defense attorney interact with that information? How might a prosecutor interact with that information? If it's civil, like how might, um, the family's attorney interact with that information, or potential defendant's attorney, interact with this information? Because certainly it's some information to interact with, right? It's very interesting. We just got a lot of interesting information, because what she is going to do, like a social investigator, right? She is going in and she is doing the work. This kind of reminds me, I don't know, I'm such a millennial. Like, I swear this is about to date me, but it kind of reminds me of Veronica Mars, the TV show where this person goes and she like really was diving into stuff, right? Because she has also outlined that there are some struggles that she has had as she has been moving through certain information with this case and a few others. So there's certainly pieces that go with it for those who are choosing to find justice in this case. But yeah, it's very interesting. Another very interesting element to me. I'm actually, since we got a little bit of time, I don't see too much dialogue, I might drop another receipt in this particular live since we here. Child, what scoundrel out there is threatening Nolan's mama? Who is doing that? I said, oh my goodness. I just felt so bad for the family, because I've been reading reports about the fact that people are reporting Nolan's mother's license. She's a nurse. So, like, really, for people who have professional degrees, y'all know what it takes to get your professional license. That is so disturbing. That is so... that's so inflammatory. Something happens horrible to your child. You're trying to get answers. You're trying to get support. You're trying, to honor your child the best that you can by asking that somebody at least give you some information. And now, because of that, she has also now been threatened with lawsuit. Now, I'm actually going to pull that clip tomorrow and show y'all the press conference with Reverend Al Sharpton, who can verify that piece. But just imagine something. There's not even a word for when parents lose children, and that describes what that experience could be like. And imagine you're just trying to cope and grieve. You're just trying to get information, and someone takes it upon themselves to try to make your actual personal life more difficult than it already is, as they are in a space of bereavement. First off, gross. That is disgusting. It bothers me so much. That just every time I think about that piece, it bothers me, because it's bad enough. Just bad enough that all the people who have been lending their subject matter expertise, all the people who've been just trying to bring justice to this case. And there are some other cases that are out there that also warrant some attention. But this one is just such a unique and peculiar case, because so many details. It's like we're watching certain things unravel real time. And certain information that is coming out real time is very interesting, right? So it's just such a sad situation that people are doing that to the actual family. Like, could you imagine? Like, you hear a lot of the creators saying things, and once again, I'm gonna show y'all some of those receipts too. But we have constantly been talking about that. There was... I'll wait till I show you the actual receipts on that. But to me, that was just so incredibly disgusting. I just can't imagine. Ugh. So this was a prior live flyer. So give myself a quick second here, because that really put me on tip just thinking about, could you just imagine as a parent just wanting to know what happened to your child, because she still technically does not have any answers on what happened. She knows that her child is gone. All these details not provided. And also keep in mind, there would not be conversation of a grand jury if it was just an accidental drowning, right? That would not be the case. So there is something that they have already come across. So once again, as I told you, we're going to be diving into some of the elements of these interviews, these different pieces, just kind of like, once again, just trying to interact with the information in just a different way was the whole purpose of this whole thing. I don't want to say that we know somebody did something, or that we have motives, that we understand what motives and stuff are, right? We can't speak on what people's mental state was when at the time of the events, assuming that they were involved in an event, right? We don't have a criminal charge, but we do have some interesting information, right? We do, in fact, have interesting information. I'm going to go ahead and give you this piece of information relevant to the boat. Y'all stick with me. I'll show y'all a couple more things. But if not, look, listen, I get it. It's Eastern Standard Time for me. I get it. Okay. This one from the same exact creator. Once again, we want to appreciate what they're offering us. She's showing us some differences about the picture. This is the picture that was sent to the mother, Nolan's mother. Okay, this picture was sent to her, and there's some inconsistencies with certain elements of the picture. So I want y'all to see it. Okay, what? Because don't take my word for it. I want y'all to see it with your own eyes. If you feel like my version of the material isn't clear enough, then I implore you to go ahead and go on their actual channel, give them some engagement, and look at it in its totality. But this is a 1-minute clip. I want you to see it. You ready? All right. Let's give her a go in 5, 4, 3, 2. Here we go.
Now, as a follow-up to my last video, I wanted to show you this. This is from Nolan's mom's Instagram from the day after he went missing. This was the picture that she was sent. So naturally, these two pictures should line up, right? So what I did is I made sure to line up this little like black loopy thing here. I made sure to line up this part of the boat and this like rope here. Now watch. Look at the difference here. Look at that. He's barely moving. And the entire skyline is different. You can say, oh, these are different pictures and like people just moved slightly, but the skyline wouldn't fucking change. So what were they hiding? Because it seems to me they didn't want people to see this boat or this green boat. Like, the skyline doesn't change over here. Look, it's in the same place. It's just over here. So 100% from the get-go, they were tampering with photographs. Absolutely nothing that they've given anybody can be trusted.
I actually want to go back to the actual Instagram post. It says directly from his mother, Christine. It says, we were provided with incorrect information regarding what he was wearing. I was sent this picture. As you can see, he was in blue swim trunks, not black, yesterday. This says July 5th. Okay. Well, interesting, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, interesting. I think it's really interesting that people who have been trying to bring even any little bit of attention to some of these cases, or not cases, but some of these elements potentially for this case, right, have been threatened with a potential lawsuit. I think that's interesting, right? We talked about how interesting this case is across the board. There are just so many unique elements. And it just always makes me wonder, right? How would a criminal defense attorney interact with that? How might prosecution interact with that? When you look at the two gentlemen, we're going to dive a little deeper into that, right? The lighting, the way that the light is hitting the body of these two is different than these two. And better yet, child, don't get me to. Okay, so if you look at this, right, you can tell the lighting is just very different for these two. Right? And it's not just because they're of a lighter complexion, right? It's the way that the light is hitting their body. The light is literally hitting them at a different angle, direction, all that, and just at a different intensity than it's hitting them. They're laying straight back and they're like very cornered. You see how they both kind of have their bodies veering this way, like going this way, and how they're kind of just laid back. It's very interesting. Right? It's very interesting. There's some other things that can be seen with the photo when you see it at a different perspective, which I'll show you in another video. How's the criminal team gonna look into that? I wonder exactly how they're going to look into that. That's pretty significant. If you're saying the very first image that was sent out seemed to be doctored, it was very interesting. I saw that there were discussions that potentially people would be sued because some material was doctored that was sent out into the community, right? Let's say, for instance, one example was audio material. Like, oh, the audio was modified. This is in an interview. And they said because of the person doing things that people say are pretty standard when they're listening to music, or better yet, it's pretty standard for audio engineering. It was stated in an interview, which I'll show you when we do the full breakdown tomorrow, that they were using pretty standard material, pretty standard process. We saw an interview, which I'll make sure that you see, so we have that same baseline tomorrow, where one of the attorneys said, hey, I see that as being doctored, right? Altered. And they talked about potential lawsuit for that, right? It's just very, very interesting posture. So let's dive into one more and then I'm going to let y'all go. So y'all got any questions? Because at this point, I presume, right? I hate to use the word assume, child. But at this point, I would presume that you see some discrepancies, right? In some of these stories, that you see them. Can't just be me. Can't just be the creator that's sitting on there, right? Okay. Okay, so let's look at this one really quick. These are all connected to the boating situation. Got just like two more if y'all want. They both are about like 1 to 2 minutes, so stick with me.
This is now my third time making this video because they keep taking it down because they don't want you to see what I have found. Katie has dry snitched, y'all. Here we see Katie's Snapchat where she's wearing a teal swimsuit and she's with a girl in a blue and white striped swimsuit. On this video of the three boats, you're going to see a girl in a blue and white striped swimsuit right here on Bart's boat. And right next to her, with the same long wet hair, is a girl in a teal swimsuit on Bart's boat. Make sure you have your brightness turned all the way up because here we have Katie in a teal swimsuit and look at her head. She is wearing a white hat. Oh, look, the video of the boat getting towed. Teal swimsuit,
swimsuit right there.
And that's not all, folks. Again, turn your brightness all the way up because right here, we've got somebody wearing red trunks. Oh, and look what we have here. Red trunks. And here's those same red trunks on the shore right after the fight with Tristan. Katie's claiming that she allegedly caught a ride home with somebody named Marty McGrath. It just so happens that a Marty McGrath is the co-owner of the Biloxi Bay RV Resort and Marina in St. Martin. Here it is, and my, that is a massive dock way out in the water. And would you look at that? It's right next to the grandparents' house. Now, in that report with the GPS coordinates, didn't they say that they went southwest towards St. Martin Bayou? Yeah, that's right, it did. And it also took them 45 minutes to get to that boat ramp over there. That only takes about 6 minutes on land. Like I said, they are trying to take down my page. Make sure you are following my backup here.
Her content page.
I want to say one thing to you. You're young, and I know you don't realize this yet, but these are not your friends. Be a hero. Do what's right.
Well, that's some interesting information, right? Okay, I told y'all, listen, I was out here getting into these receipts. Now, look how that hand covered that screen. Y'all like, girl. Okay, let's see if I can give y'all just one more. Listen, y'all see, I got them loaded up. I'm ready for when we do this tomorrow. Let's see. That one will be a little longer than not. Let's see. Let's go. Let's give y'all this one. I'll just give y'all this one.
This is now the second video that I've made about Nolan Wells. Inexplicably is not eligible for the For You page. And that's not including the 3 videos that they took down. So let's talk about what I talked about in this. Go back and watch the video I posted yesterday for more details. The party that night was allegedly at this girl's house that I will call Ava D. Right here in the yellow is where the party was at. You can almost perfectly plot out every dock that they stopped at on this little trip of theirs before they went to the boat dock. I also discovered that Lieutenant Patrick Carone, you know, the person who first wrote up that very first report after Nolan's mom called in, someone that he is related to apparently married into Ava D's family, allegedly. But like I said in my last video, I show my work. I also discovered that Warren's mother apparently had a birthday party just weeks before Nolan's disappearance that was attended not only by the D family, but the mayor of Ocean Springs. Do y'all remember the girl whose name was given to the police and they went and they questioned her and she said that she was on a completely different island and hadn't seen Nolan in a year? Well, I found a picture of her from last 4th of July. I'm not going to tell you which one of these girls is her, but I bring up this picture from last 4th of July because does anybody recognize something here? Well, I don't know about you guys, but that looks like the same swimsuit to me and the same hair color. Not necessarily the same person. I'm not saying that 2 people can't own the same swimsuit, but that's a bit coincidental for me. She also appears to be wearing the same tiny gold necklace. What this means, I don't know.
Right
but I think Crump's team needs to find her. And I spent hours the other day going through these people's pages, trying to get a feel for the social connection. I can tell you with certainty that Katie is not a part of this crowd. Her family is not affluent. And not only that, it seems like her mother is going through something very bad health-wise. I'm not going to get into details on that. She is visibly sick or visibly recovering. And let's not forget that these people are all doctors. I also want to say, while I was going through all of these people's pages, I went through like 30 kids' pictures. There is not a single video, not a single picture of Nolan with any of these kids. Y'all are best friends, y'all are buddies, but there's not a single picture of them. And to be clear, I'm definitely rattling some cages because they are clearly watching my page because yesterday, after I posted the video, suddenly several of the matriarchs of these families didn't make their friends list public anymore. Very interesting.
Okay. Right? I told y'all we was gonna get on to some of these boat details, okay? And also just the weight sometimes of when you're trying to do what you believe to be the correct thing. Sometimes that can be a heavy crown to wear because as you can hear her say, as she has been just pulling what open access information. If you made your social media accounts public, right? If it sits in open domain, because she said she's just going on looking and seeing things that were what public. She said because someone changed her things to private. So that means this is all open access kind of information. Or someone made the information public and it's in public domain. why would she be getting some of that kind of interactions and experiences and exposure? Interesting. When I was younger, the elders used to say things like, hit dogs holla. You know what I'm saying? Hit dogs holla. Now, we don't necessarily know what occurred, who was involved, like this particulars, right? But that's what we trying to find out. It's just interesting as people are trying to get the information. They're being met with certain kinds of life experiences, and that's unfortunate. That's super unfortunate. In this particular case, it just sounds like, hey, you won't be able to put this up. You won't be able to monetize off of this content because they keep snatching it down. Or not permitting it in certain spaces that could be monetizable. But for some other creators, they have experienced influx of threats or potential discussions of lawsuit. Very interesting kind of posture, right? And once again, we're gonna dive a little bit more because I got a lot of other receipts. I've been just collecting receipts. Listen, I've been out here collecting receipts, just trying to think, how might these teams interact with this information? One of the most salient pieces, let's say we take some of the other pieces out, right? Let's say we take some of the other pieces out and we focus on one critical detail that she gave. One of the biggest pushes, PR even, has been, what the conversation has been, that, let's go here. The conversation has been that they are friends. That has been the biggest anchor to everybody. Oh, we are all best friends. We all said in the beginning, some interesting posture about how you handle your friends. I never handled my friends like that, boy. If my friends ever handled me like that, I would take that to be a problem, right? That reevaluation needed. And, a lot of times we've had those situations like where you realize, hey, it's not giving what I thought it would give, right? It makes a little bit more sense as we've listened to her dig into their accounts that they made public to some degree, that she could not find pictures and videos with these friends. The whole anchor has been that they are all, not just a couple, not just one or two, but they all are best friends. However, she cannot find pictures. And she said she looked through content for roughly 30 people. Because there's a lot of people out there on that water. You're looking for connections to other people, right? You should see something. You should see something. Y'all said y'all grew up together. You don't got no pictures. It seems like if you're making a statement that y'all friends, you would at least make sure you threw up some pictures. Even recent, some form of hey, I'm grieving, I'm bereaving, I'm in a place of bereavement, something. But to have nothing, it just seemed a little interesting, right? We'll say interesting. That's just so interesting. Now, there's some things I've been seeing as far as the interviews. Like I said, I'm gonna try to save all that good jazz for tomorrow because y'all know how I'm getting excited, excitable. Sometimes in the wrong way, because some of this is it's upsetting. You know what I mean? There's a young man who lost his life. There's a family that is grieving. There's a community that is grieving the loss of this young man. And people are merely just saying, we want answers. We want answers. Is that really too much to ask for answers to what happened to this young man, so that his family can properly grieve, so they can put him to rest properly? I'm baffled. I'm still flabbergasted. I wish I had my pearls around so I could clutch them. Threaten somebody, mama. He gonna sue his mama for trying to find out what's going on with her son, saying that, the young men who are reported to be the friends who somehow don't have no pictures nowhere, have been subjected to unfortunate events, and it does sound like, you know, what they're experiencing is uncomfortable. We don't want to take away from that, but you're saying because the mother said, hey, I want this investigated, this needs further investigation, you're saying that's the foundation for and the onset of their discomfort, and therefore you're using that as your basis to sue her as her child is the one laying in the ground. The soil above is still soft because it just happened like a month ago. How tasteless. Everything, how can I put this? It's like everything that you say doesn't always have to be tasteful, you know, when you're doing things, because we all have our moments where you're like, ooh, could have said that better, could have did that better. But it should never be tasteless. It should just never be tasteless. You know what I'm saying? That is just so wrong to do to somebody. That is so incredibly wrong to do to somebody. Like, I could not imagine. I'm not directly connected to this family, right? I could only imagine what that family is going through to have to grieve so publicly. When we talk about harm absorption, what is that family having to go through to see these type of things, have to deal with that? Imagine being in a place of bereavement and then you got all that going on. I'm telling you, it's been publicly reported. They sitting over there trying to make her regular everyday life more complicated than it needs to be. We already know she can't live a regular life situation without people identifying her, recognizing her. So whatever little normalcy she had, you want to rob her of that? People have reported her license. She's a nurse. People have reported her nursing license. And one thing I'll tell you, they real funny when it comes to nursing license. It's difficult. People have to go through a lot when you're going to defend yourself, right? It's easy to report and it's very difficult to disprove certain things. It's a process, right? So while she's going through something that is unimaginable for a parent, somebody has the unadulterated audacity to do that to that woman. And then on top of that, so you're impacting her ability, right, to bring funds into her home and to try to do what she can to sustain herself in a time where the economy just jacked up across the board. Now she's in a situation where she's saying, hey, I need to bring attention to something. I have to advocate, because initially before all this happened, they had ruled it as an accidental drowning. So now she had to put forth effort to advocate for someone to look into her child's case. Takes time, effort, resources. When you think of resources, money is one of them. You have to get a lawyer. That costs money. That costs money. You have some people who are in the community, let's say social community support, who are saying, hey, I'll lend my subject matter expertise. You had the auto engineer say, I heard something peculiar, I had to put that up, right? You have other people, this creator here that we kind of featured on the page today, like, who said, hey, I'm going to spend some time looking into this because it doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't sit well with my spirit. I'm having difficulty digesting something that I have seen with my eyes. So I put it out in what? Public domain, so it's not accessible to more people. Like the legal team, like the everyday person, whoever that may be. It takes money for them to pursue that in a legal situation, whether this goes criminal, civil, or both, right? A grand jury they wouldn't have been having discussions about grand jury looking into this if there wasn't something, it was some meat on them bones. It wasn't some meat on them bones, they wouldn't be looking at it. They wouldn't have a conversation about them potentially looking at it if there wasn't meat on the bones. The criminal team or criminal defense team, right? They wouldn't have set up a fund to say that. They specifically said it was a legal fund. They didn't say, oh, we're going to take this money, we're going to send it to the Nolan family, make sure they good. We're going to use the money for a funeral, right? We're going to use this to help with investigation. We're not using this to make sure the family good. Maybe give them a couple of months so they could take some time off from work so they don't got to deal with everything. like friends might do. And not all friends do that, right? But when my friends I've had friends pass away, I definitely have done things to look out for their family. I definitely checked in or made sure money or something was sent their way. You sometimes you can just buy food and or even prepackaged things, or you Uber or whoever y'all you work with. Don't let me seem like I'm promoting any particular one, Grubhub, whatever it is that y'all do. You send it over just to make sure that they eating. When people are in bereavement, they go through all kinds of things. Some people can't eat. Some people, all they can do is eat away their pain. We didn't hear the fund was going for anything like that. We didn't hear it was going for the funeral arrangements, because we can only imagine what it's like as a parent. We're talking about the harm absorption, right? What it's like to try to prepare to have to do funeral arrangements for your child. It wasn't like, oh, we collected money for that. No. It was first noted online that they started collecting, or at least the posting online shows August 1st. And when I looked on the fundraiser, it appeared that the first bigger payment, or at least the payment I could view, one of the oldest payments that I could view, was also August 1st. It says specifically for legal fund to defend them, to support them, in their life experiences. I'm not saying they didn't have, difficult experiences after this event. I'm not saying their lives are not being altered. I'm sure that they are. I'm sure that they are. They're very young people, and the way that the world is now, right? The way that social media is nowadays, I could only imagine. I could imagine it's difficult. But in imagining how difficult it is for them, imagine how horrid all of this has to be for a mother, for a father or stepfather, for a cousin, for a close friend, for somebody, maybe their social situations. You know what I'm saying? Like people who had relationships with that young man. But especially that immediate family. If that's the conversation, right? And if you go at that fundraiser, matter of fact, if you go look at that fundraiser, this is outdated as far as the number, but that was as of over a week ago, right? This was the fundraiser a week ago, right? Stand with Nolan Wells' targeted friends, specific language, right? This was done by Warren's father, Dr. Benjamin Hudson, is the one who created this fundraiser. But then if you go watch the interviews, which we'll see tomorrow, you'll see the hats that they'll well say Cox, and it's for Cox Firm, but Taylor and Cox Law Firm. If you're familiar with the one attorney that is the Cox attorney, he has been doing a lot of movements in the past year. He worked with the Trump administration, or better specifically, let's say Trump. Can't remember specifically administration or him individually. So I'll just say we know that we have seen his name in headlines recently with regards to his interactions with Trump and some legal matters that occurred there, right? Pretty high profile attorney with a very particular approach to certain kinds of things, right? And we're gonna dive more so into just looking at the whole setup. But as you guys know, on the Legally Everywhere channel, a lot of times we do talk about different angles, and sometimes that can look like harm absorption. For me, the question is always this right here. We right here. Let's look at her. Right here. Impact, power dynamic, harm absorption. Man, could you imagine? I was talking about initially GPS coordinates for this live, but we had moved over to just the harm absorption. Just imagine what that family is going through. We hit different parts of the framework that we use here on the channel, but it's just imagine. And I always just say, just try to have some humility. Try to I always try to extend grace and stuff too. People are human. I'm sure those young people are very scared. I'm sure the mother and the family is also very scared and bewildered at times by everything that is happening. But there are certainly some inconsistencies that we are kind of mapping and tracking. And it's not just here on this channel. It's lots of places that are mapping and tracking it. There are lots of inconsistencies. When I tell you the things that I was seeing in some of these interviews, and the interview to the interview, I was like, oh my goodness. I think that's actually quite peculiar to allow them to do that, because some of these inconsistencies are being more so outlined because of these interviews. But that's neither here nor there. That's an interesting thing. Like, from the perspective of prosecution and the defense side, like, even some of those interviews, the things that are being said, the things that are changing real time as far as storylines are going, right? Um, Once again, we'll talk about it tomorrow. There's discussion, oh, some, certain people aren't there. Then you hear some more interviews, and now certain people are there. And you're like, oh, well, isn't that interesting? So, child, we going to stay in these receipts. We're going to stay in these receipts because there's a lot going on. As I told y'all, I try to give y'all as many points of exposure as I can give. I try to make sure the content reaches as many accessibility needs as I possibly can. A little bit of Don Lemon, a little bit of Nancy Grace. Sometimes content creators like the one I just introduced you to today. Actually, I didn't read. It's a reintroduction. But because I've had some of her material on here as well. Once again, engage with their content as well. But we've pulled actual documents that sit online. We have looked at some of the fundraisers and some of the funding sources, right? Also should know that there's a GoFundMe for the mother, or more so connected to the mother. It's supposed to be for Nolan's case if you wanted to donate. There's a fundraiser that was put together so that she could have funds to push forward with this legal matter. Just like, and there's also one for the targeted friends of Nolan. And they have that fundraiser page as well. But I just wanted to make sure that I noted that, because in the previous one I hadn't acknowledged that. I said that I saw a page, but I didn't confirm if she was the one who had access or the funding would go to her. From what I have reviewed, it appears that is going to her, that one that is on GoFundMe. So we talked about the financial pieces too. We talked about, the different awards that people were putting out and how it got matched and how we got here. Once again, I told y'all we'll walk you back through tomorrow if you're interested in the different receipts that I have on this. But when I tell you, I just think that is so unfair to that family. That is so wrong. Some things are just tasteless. You know what I'm saying? It really is. Like, I threatened to sue the mama, and the ground is, and the soil is still soft atop of where her baby is probably resting, is cold-blooded. That is cold-blooded. That's mean. That is so mean. So hurtful. My heart really goes out to that family. That is so incredibly hurtful. It nearly makes me tearful. I do not have children. I could only imagine that kind of gut-wrenching heartache, that someone would even not only think something like that, but let it come from their mouth. How dare you be so cold-blooded? And they said it like it was not a problem. Like, that was just totally cool. That's the part that had my flabbergasted. I was like, oh my goodness. I know maybe the tactics to stop some of the people from doing content, like how, we've been seeing it. But the mother? Child. That bothered me. So the primary focus of this live was just kind of give y'all a quick receipt about the GPS element, right? Because I wanted to make sure y'all got that. We can see that there were some discrepancy issues. But also, we also was talking about the impact absorption, power dynamics. That is just The mother trying to get an answer. You gonna threaten to sue her? Ugh. And yuck. So that is that piece. Let me see. I had some notes. I didn't deviated somewhat. Just chit-chatting with you. But we kind of talked about how some of the statements that they've been making have been conflicting with the GPS data, right? We're going to dive into that more. But once again, these are things I think that those legal teams should be looking into. Because it's mighty peculiar. It's mighty peculiar. If you were on the team, what are some things that y'all would look into, right? Like maybe phone data, right? There's a call, additional GPS, is this surveillance? Because we was told they had some type of surveillance and cameras out there. I found it interesting that they had material of Nolan going in, but they don't have like the pictures and stuff of him coming out. You know how they said, we'll dive into that tomorrow. I got the videos. I won't keep y'all too long. But, you know, looking at the timestamps and interviews, photographs, videos, we're going to jump through some of that tomorrow and maybe even a little bit on Sunday so I don't have y'all too long. But, child, that's a lot, and it's heavy. It's heavy. And keep in mind, this one creator, she just said she pulled the picture and just laid it at the top of Google Maps. And we saw that there was inconsistencies. We saw there was some movements with the images that don't seem like that should be the case. That's a discrepancy within itself. I always got questions. If these were younger people and they were intoxicated, right? First of all, it sounds like underage drinking to start with, right? And I'm surprised I haven't heard people talk about that angle. But if all these people are just knowingly talking about intoxication, we see beer cans and all of that, y'all intoxicated. Who driving a boat? Is an adult on there? Is there a boat? Is there a captain for the boat? You tell me there was no adults there? Because we heard the call. They said, oh, there's no adult here. Who? What? We all been young before, you know, but it just seemed peculiar to me that there would be no adults there when y'all know these people going there to drink. Now, I had a job some years back where I worked with younger people. And I worked in, let's say, a community that was off the water. Now, I'm from Michigan, so you're never too far from a body of water, right? We're surrounded by lakes. They usually say you're never more than 15 minutes away from the water. However, one particular area for which I was working, I worked in the community, I'll say. And one thing I found that was really interesting, that for that particular community, before they would even go to get like their regular driver's license, a lot of them, when they were like 15, they would get boater's license. So I do know for people who live near the water, maybe be a little bit more affluent, have access to boats, they do typically offer some type of education for boating. So I'm not saying that part is wrong. I do know that in some places they do offer that, and even within the actual school curriculum, right? Teaching safety. But to know that people going out for the 4th of July, younger people that you know probably going to party a little bit, they give the impression that that intention was to party. You actively see liquor. My question is, who is driving all these boats? Because we heard multiple boats. It sounds like at least 4 of them connected to this story. And a series of boats that were out there. Like, who is driving these boats? You know, who can give us maybe some clear information? I had questions about that. That seems like something you want to be looking into. Like, it just seemed like, why was that not a question? Child, and that's the one thing. I feel like the more you dig in, the more you find yourself just sitting there by the edges. I swear. Like, y'all had me like this, by the edges. But instead of that pink, it's probably like blue. Blue just a chill color. It's just chill and vibe. But by the edges, they have me every single week. I was thinking I was going to be able to cover certain pieces, and it's just, I got so many questions. I swear I do. I just have so many questions. The map that they was able to overlap, that whole inconsistency bothered me. The fact that the picture that was sent to the mama, like there was inconsistencies with that, because you can see, like I showed y'all, the light. Two had light movement and then two didn't. It was like, what's going on? You had an image where it appears that the boats behind were kind of like in there, then they're gone, in there, then it's gone. But the other pieces of the picture don't appear to be altered. So it's like, okay, something is happening there with that photo. It's just so unfortunate. That is just so unfortunate. I'm so interested to see what the criminal defense team is going to do when they look at the information. Like, how might they interact with this information? How are they processing it? These are questions I'm having now. But I think it'll be interesting later to see what those movements will be, what the posture even might be at that time. Prosecution, same. What are they thinking as they're looking at it? What, what angle, posture might they take with some of the materials that they are seeing? Like, how might they engage with it? The one lawyer who was very vocal, there was two that been interviewed, they took a very strong posture with regards to this case definitively. Even though they just met these young men, they took a very definitive stance on what they did and did not do, and said that there was certain evidence that they had that could show certain things that would just disprove everything. Because if their person who could say they seen Nolan at 6 or something like that, right, says all the rest of the information didn't matter. We'll look at that clip tomorrow. That's interesting, right? It was just very interesting. It's like, oh, well, that other stuff won't matter. Oh, okay, interesting. So it's just always in the posture. That was an interview with Nancy Grace. Go check that one out. There's lots of interviews that are done by Officer Tatum. Very interesting material there. So at this point, child, I done had y'all for a good old time. Y'all done brought us into Sunday. Now I'm saying Sunday, Saturday, child. Listen, by the edges, y'all have had me, because I'm done threw myself a whole extra day until we know. Give me that day back. We are into the next day because it's now midnight, or actually 12:03. So I'm going to go ahead and call it. But you all have a wonderful day, the day that you deserve. Practice self-care as you interact with this material, because sometimes it can be triggering. It can be slightly like jarring. It can be like, man, that's wild. Sometimes, it can be like helpful. You're like, okay, I'm glad that there's some movements happening, and this family will get an answer and the community can get an answer. And sometimes you're just like, man, that's really sucky, and that sucks that people choose to display humanity that way. Some things that I have seen is just like, some people suck at being human. To report that lady's license and try to make her life more difficult when she is already dealing with something that is like unimaginable as a parent is cruel. But we do at times live in a cruel world. What I'm hoping is that through the course of this case and some other incidents and things that happen, that we can see how things can be just at some point, that we can bring some type of justice to this case and cases that are similar to it. Once again, I always say I hope that Lady Liberty is not blind to these matters and this issue. On this channel, I'll be trying to interact with it through the lens of criminal law, but we will have human elements, because this is something that is ongoing as far as investigation. This is something that's real. This is something that active. This is something that recently happened. There will be emotions. There will be feelings. And I think it's always important to be respectful of the fact that we never know how close people are to these cases. So when we leave comments, we engage with things, whether it's my channel or others, just try to be considerate of the fact that the family could be reading that or seeing that. Whether it's the family of the friends or family of, Nolan directly. Like, discussion is, always okay. Sometimes even disagreements are okay. It's just, some of the mean hatefulness that you see online. It's not cool. You know, at the end of the day, there's a family that's grieving. That mother is going through it, I'm sure. And as I said, there are other people who are going through life changes and adjustments too. So let us have the discussion and discuss the things that, you know, we can discuss, and things that are open access. Try to just go through it respectfully. But honestly, we're gonna look into it. We're gonna get into them receipts. And you know, if we're gonna get into them receipts, but we want to do it respectfully. We want to be kind about certain stuff, because like I said, like, I just feel for that family. That really sucked. So as we saw the inconsistencies with the GPS stuff, and we talked about the humanity elements, child, that's all I got for y'all tonight, because I'm gonna have to say the rest for tomorrow, because I was half tempted. I didn't talk through some of the time. I could have just went and put something up, but you'll just have to catch me on the next one. This is Legally Everywhere with Childhood. We legally everywhere. We looking into everything. If you have not already, like, comment, subscribe, share, engage. It helps YouTube know that people are interested in the content, and that potentially you would recommend somebody else being able to engage with this content. So I always appreciate that. I don't require it. Listen, I don't force nobody hand. You hear me? But if you would be so kind as to like, comment, engage, subscribe, I appreciate it. I always love content and feedback, because it allows me to know like what you guys are more interested in as far as the content. I'm always going to put up the things that I'm processing and seeing and doing, but if there are certain areas that are of interest, I'm always open to what that could look like and that possibility on the channel. I know I like to do visuals, but if there's like some other point of access or entry that you're like, hey, I would really like that, I'll give it a little try. We'll see what happens. I'm not opposed to that. So once again, stay engaged, and what I'll see y'all in the next video, and that'll be tomorrow, or technically later today. I'll see y'all then, okay? And hopefully all y'all are come back.